You have the ability to not just run a nonprofit, but to ignite this movement. And I want to tell you that you can do it, and you already have those pieces there because it starts with one person. Every movement starts one-to-one. And the beauty of mission work is we already have lots of people that are the one, and they already believe and they're already here. But we've been looking at how do we serve them rather than how do they come alongside us.
Welcome to the Moxie Podcast. We are in the month of August and we're coming to the end, guys, but I'm so excited for who we have on the podcast today because all month we've been talking about strategies as we move into the end of the year, specifically for those listening who are in the nonprofit space, social enterprise world, who are looking for just ideas and motivation and inspiration of how you can continue to fund development and continue to fundraise and do that in a way that we don't get burnt out. I think there's that we were just talking off the mic about this and about getting tired and what it means to rest. And so I just want to welcome my good friend Becky to the podcast with We Are for Good. Welcome to the Moxie community.
Hello, precious friend. I'm so honored to be here.
It is. So your listeners have heard all about how we originally met, but I would love for you, one, to give your quick intro of who you are and then how we met, because no one on the Moxie podcast knows how we actually have formally met and became friends.
It is such a wild story. So, hi, Moxie listeners. I'm so honored to be here because I just love Jenny Nuccio. I love everything that comes out of this community. Becky Endicott, I call myself a recovering major gift officer, but I'm really a marketer disguised as a fundraiser, ridiculous idealist, and one of the co-founders of We Are for Good, which is a social impact movement where we're gathering change makers from around the world to flex community conversation and activation to do more good, to elevate how we think, how we move through this world with innovation and with wellness and with, again, rest and creativity nestled into everything that we do. So we started out as a podcast just like this, and it's grown into a massive media ecosystem. And now we call ourselves really an impact uprising movement. And we have membership and we have people that come in that get that community, they get content, they get ways to get unstuck, but they really are doing this work. And how do we show up together and in authenticity and putting all of the things that are messy about us out there and working through it in a way that really is generative and feels good. And so we met at I think it was 1 a.m. my time. Let's talk about how wild that is. I got an email from Jenny. We were up just in startup mode. My co-founder John and I were doing double duty trying to build We Are for Good. We had a full clientele roster that we were doing on the side to fund We Are for Good. And we got this email in the middle of the night that says, I saw my women's little, I don't know what to call it. I call it the banner, the
Hang
Be Good
sign.
banner.
Yeah, you call it banner,
the
but I
hang
love that too.
sign. Yes, yes. I see this in the background of your podcast, and I just wanted to get to know you. And I sat in on one of your training sessions, and John and I were texting, and I forwarded him this email and said, there's something about this human, the way she's talking, the way we're connected. She is half a world away right now. And then you said, look on the back of that little banner and tell me whose name was on there. And I tell this story all the time. It was Fatuma. And Fatuma has become such a beacon for us of why we need to show up in kindness and why the simple things that we hang behind us or the way that we live our lives, or if we're conscious consumers, like those little 1% actions, how they collect up into beautiful community connection relationships. And from there, we were just fast friends. And then you came and saw John and I in Oklahoma with your family on a road trip.
I do not think, I tell people all the time, I will show up at your front door. And I
love that you
believe
did.
me. And we
I
did. We
want you
drove
to.
on
I'm
up.
Italian.
We drove
Alla
on up.
familia. More people, more hands, more mouths, whatever we need to do. We'll feed you.
It was so good. I think,
Amazing.
but okay, so I wanted you to tell that story because I think it just shows the power of connection of just when you receive such an authentic, like, hey, like, I want to be your friend, or what is this? What's happening? Like, what's going on? And the crazy part is, I don't even think I realized you guys had just started. Like, I didn't know you were in startup. Like, so it's been so beautiful to see this movement grow over the 4 years. And so,
Wild.
because 4, 5 years, 4 years,
Yeah,
right?
4. Yeah, almost 4.
Yeah.
4 this month.
Because guys, Becky and John are really crazy. First of all, you guys produced
Totally. 3
three
podcasts a week.
podcasts a week. When did when just like watching y'all's like community grow when you record produce 3 podcasts a week when the average is like once a week, it just that alone was just so fascinating to me of y'all's not just the amount of like, hey, I want to get information out and we want to be like connected, but the domino effect that it played in the nonprofit sector. Cause I feel like I could probably name anybody in the nonprofit sector and you'd be like, we interviewed them. We know them.
Maybe. I don't know. We're like at 560 episodes in, and I have to tell you, I thought John was nuts when he proposed. He actually proposed 5 days a week, if I'm being honest. Like, and Julie, our producer, and I were like, absolutely not. But there was this unorthodox approach to the way that we understood from working in nonprofit and social impact movements for 20 years that this compounding effect has an impact if you can show up in it very authentically, vulnerably, if you can share what you have. And so, I mean, we didn't have a great business strategy in terms of how much money we wanted to make, but we were like, we're going to do 2 things really well. And it's like, we're going to be really consistent in the way we show up, and we're going to make as many friends as humanly possible in this space of belonging. And when you just show up that way, it just was wild to watch again the domino effect you reference happen, and we're still standing in it today. It's a wild, wonderful thing to watch. So honored to be at the helm, truly.
Is there a moment, like, I'm just curious, is there a moment in this 4 years where you can just like top 3 moments where you're like, I can't believe that just happened and this is so cool? Do you have, I'm sure you have
Oh
a
yeah.
million of
I
those,
mean,
but
a million. The one that's rising to the top. I love that you asked this question, and I love that I'm going to answer about something that happened in Africa. But we launched this collective conversation and virtual meetup called Impact Up last month. So it's a little fresh on the brain. It's been a little less than a month since we've had this, and we created this global summit to come and talk about one theme that is holding us back, that we need to unwind to think about differently, and it was power. But within the virtual meetup, we had that during the day, but then we took it down to the grassroots level and had communities meet up around the world. We just said, hey, who wants to raise
Mhm.
their hand to host a table, a conversation? It doesn't even have to be like at a massive venue. It's like, go find a coffee shop or your local brewery or whatever it is, a picnic table, and have a conversation. And we had 87 people raise their hands to do that. And one of them was a man by the name of Simon Karanda. He runs the Smile Akamwenhu out of Jinja, Uganda. And he's been such an important part of the We Are for Good story. And he raised his hand and said, I want to do this in Jinja. And we said, go for it. And he gathered 100 people from 5 local villages. He went into 5 different
Wow.
villages, talked to the leaders there, and said, this is a topic of power that we want to talk about. How do we unwind it, and how do we be more collective? How do we help each other? How do we uplift women? They're missionaries, but they also have like a microfinance component to their nonprofit. And he said, how do we help more women? How do we help more moms? He had such big traction that he invited someone from the embassy who's coming to the next one, couldn't come to this one, but is driving out to Jinja for the next one that we're hosting. And yeah, 100 people gathering after a massive monsoon rainstorm next to the Nile, crying and sharing and hearing what each other needs and hearing how to rethink about the way we show up. I mean, that is a moment. I have the photos that he sent us an 18-page impact report from it. I mean, it was just
Oh my
one
gosh.
of those moments where it's like, oh, this has gone well beyond what we thought it would be, and we need to let go and just let it happen because it's so organically and beautifully happening. And we'll never know the impact, and I'm great with that. I'm just great.
Yeah.
The ripple keeps going.
Yeah. I've this is like a side note, but I've always my legacy research, I've talked to my university that I work with about this, is how do you actually, or can you ever quantify a ripple effect of something?
Oh
Because
my
I think
gosh, how
it's
fascinating.
so if I ever get there, that's just like a pipe dream, but if I ever get to like that, because I talk about it all the time where it's like when I see it at Amani, I see it in podcasts, I see it in relationships. It's like you have, it's, I remember just even a side conversation I had with my cousin. We just had a family reunion and she was talking to me about a conversation we had when I was like early 20s. So she's in her late teens. That was life changing for her. I
Mm,
don't remember the conversation. I don't remember anything, right? Or what but she remembers word for word what I said. And I think it's those moments, right? When we're doing the mundane, when we're just showing up, when we're connecting, when we're creating, and we're doing something, even that we're more centered in passion, where we see, or we don't necessarily see, like, you're saying, I don't even know the impact that it'll cause, but it's just like we're such focused in and in the right place that it does it on its own. And I feel that I've gotten to be a little bit of, I don't know, a fly in the wall of watching you and John and Julie and your team do that over the years of just showing up in the right
mm.
place, putting one foot in front of the other and just letting it happen. And so I think it's cool that you're here now. I loved that you shared that story to see, like, to take a step back, yeah, and let it do what it needs to do, and keep moving forward, because it's you guys, yeah, we
Oh,
worked really
gee,
hard. I can't
thank
believe
you.
he proposed 5 days a week. I'm going to talk to him about this. 5 days a week. That's a lot of
John is all
podcasting.
in on everything. But yes, we're down to 2 a week if it makes people feel better. We even pulled back to 2 a week because, yeah, you got to put your attention and time on lots of other things. And so we're listening to community and showing up in the ways they need us and just trying to support and understand that business is not business and lives in a silo, and personal isn't just personal. I mean, they cross
Mm-hmm.
over, and how do we live in the gray, in that messy middle, and how do we make it less messy? And for us, the answer
Mm-hmm.
is more community, more understanding, more listening. Yeah, I'm a work in progress.
Yeah. I think you said it right there, but as nonprofit leaders, we're always looking at philanthropy. We're always looking at more donors. We're always looking at raising our community. But what do you believe is, a couple of common themes that you've had in these over 500 episodes, or these conversations that you have with people that are either, something that this community still is trying to mind the gap for, or maybe they're encouraged by? What are some themes that you have seen over the years?
Well, I definitely think that, we have a trend series we put out every year, and it's the things at the top of the year. And these are the things we think people are missing. And there's some really big ones that I think are there for the taking for those who are bold and brave enough to just try something different. I mean, one is I know we're gonna talk about movements, but you have the ability to not just run a nonprofit, but to ignite this movement. And I want to tell you that you can do it, and you already have those pieces there because it starts with one person. Every movement
Mm-hmm.
starts one to one. And the beauty of mission work is we already have lots of people that are the one, and they already believe and they're already here. But we've been looking at how do we serve them rather than how do they come alongside us and help us. And this is a great thing for nonprofit because it takes all the little widgets and things, tasks that we're supposed to do and that are on our plate that are way too many. We have such a capacity problem, and it allows us to share the microphone, and it allows us to share the work. And the work actually gets cleaner, and it gets bigger, and the story gets bigger, and it gets more diverse. And this is a beautiful thing. And I don't think it's something that we should be afraid of. I think it's something we should cling to and chase because it's really allowing nonprofits not just to be these like standalone monolithic things, with this event over here. And then we have the annual campaign. It's like, oh no, this is bigger than just
Mm-hmm.
XYZ Foundation or XYZ organization. This is about the thing that we're trying to change for the world. So I definitely think the movement is one piece. I think one other one that's a little unorthodox again is retention is an inside job. We talk so much about retention of donors, and we're watching a crisis unfold within the social impact space of people leaving the sector, like
Mm-hmm.
our workers, our professionals, and they're burned out and they're exhausted and they're overburdened and they're under resourced. And we want to focus in on the retention on the inside because the
Mm-hmm.
more healthy we are at our core, that will spill out into the health of the movement, of the mission. And so we're putting a lot of emphasis on how are we investing in culture? How are we listening to people? How are we checking in and saying, how you doing? How are we breaking systems of power that are holding us in the mission back? And then maybe one more I would throw in, just because I love it so much, is media scales impact. We're literally watching right now in this age of how fast, information travels and how
Mm-hmm.
viral it can become. And stories matter. And we have cornered the market in this business on the most incredible, powerful, life-changing stories that are happening right now, and stories of good and stories of hope. And that is what people are clinging to when they get on their devices right now, because they don't want to read the news. It's depressing, and we're not even sure if it's a skewed version of what's actually happening, but we have the ability to not only tell the truth, but we have the ability to inspire trust, gather hearts and minds that are really connected to what we're doing. And media is the way to do that. And I'm not talking about buying a billboard or an ad at the Super Bowl. I'm talking about just getting on your phone and telling a
Mm-hmm.
story or asking your community, what has been really impactful to you as you've been in our space, in our community? What has it meant? And using that as media, putting it on social channels, putting it in an email, sharing it widely. I mean, I think that's how good travels, and how eyeballs, where people go from being lurkers on the side to really leaning in and then starting to subscribe to that email list or becoming a friend, or they make their first gift, or they volunteer. And so I think just little things like that, those are the trends. And there's a million more, but those are the three that are lifting to the top for me today.
No, I love that. I think so. We started this month talking with Dana with Positive Equation. And one thing that we talked about
Love
was like
her.
sharing our story more. I know she's amazing. We have a fun story of how we met. I was extremely
You
pregnant
were
and
the reason that we met, Dana, because you found us when we co-hosted
yes.
a webinar. So it's all coming full circle.
Yeah, it's great. I found you guys through, anyways, it's side notes off the mic, guys. But anyways, it's all really, this is what shows movement connection, all of that. So, but
Totally.
Dana, we were talking about writing a book and she was talking about just her story and this idea of like, instead of handing a business card, what does it look like to hand your book? Like how much more
Mm,
powerful is that? Because then people, just know your story. And I feel like I've gotten to experience that in the last year and a half of being able to like gift a book and people to learn so much more
so
about
proud of
me
you.
and our organization and all of that. And so I want to go back to kind of that telling the story and this idea of as even prepping for this conversation when we talked about just like a movement and how it's just happening and where to begin because I think this is where people get stuck. I think they fear maybe I don't know. I think people maybe fear the idea of what people might think, even though it's
Yes.
amazing, the impact.
Yes.
That's what's so crazy. I'm like, you're doing really cool stuff. Like people aren't gonna like,
Same.
they're gonna like want to be a part of that story. Like share it, share it, share it. And I feel like that's what I've been saying in each episode this whole month. But let's go back to just We Are for Good in general. Cause I would love to hear. I mean, you guys started as a podcast. Like you
Yeah,
started, did you ever like and then it created like we've talked about the inertia it created the continuous movement of what it is all out of your hands now like you could step
totally.
away like you were just on a sabbatical rest for 17 days and stuff
It
still
kept
happened
going.
right it
Yes,
kept
thank
growing
goodness.
you have
Yes.
2,000 emails or something that you have to catch up with anyways all the things So can we like back it up to that? Because I want to encourage our listeners that like it's not going to happen overnight. I think we
Yeah.
continue to repeat it, but it happens. One thing that you said that you and John said was that you're going to just show up and do it consistently. And I think
Mhm.
this is what gets us in trouble too, of like not showing up consistently. So one, yeah, what do you think about what's happening from where you started? And yeah, just how would you share that with our listeners today?
Yeah, I'll give you a framework, and I'll give you some, like, maybe even a place to start that really worked for us. Because if you can get into this mindset that community is business, like, and I am in the business of building community and activating community rather than I'm just here to be a worker bee in the mission. It opens up something for you. And I do
Mm,
think, like, it takes an abundant mindset to think, okay, I'm going to work a little differently, which is hard. I mean, I've been in this work for 22 years, and I'm used to the rhythm of the way I work in nonprofit, but the world is wildly different. I've been calling it like BC and AC, like before COVID, after COVID. Like after COVID, the world of
so
work, the
true.
world of interaction, the world of community is so different, and we need to adapt with it. So I'll tell you where we started, and I think it's a universally great place for everyone to start. And we started with our values. And if you can go back to the story of your values, I'm not talking about your mission, I'm not talking about your vision, I'm talking about why are you here and what do you represent? And we have 8 core values that We Are for Good. I won't go through all of them, but we ended up wrapping a podcast, our first Friday podcast. We would do 2 episodes with guests on a very specific topic. And then John and I would take Fridays and we would teach something, and we would unpack something that we felt like was either modern or sort of disruptive and thinking in a different way. And we started with our values because we wanted people to just know who we are and know what we're about. And when you have values like everyone matters, that's our first value. And another one is that it's not about giving. It's about belief, which means it's not about the money. It's about how do you grow someone into believing so deeply that they'll show up in many ways, not just as a donor, but as an amplifier, an influencer, a storyteller, a volunteer. I mean, we want people to be locked in. And so I think this is a time to like step back and say, who are we? And what are we about? And what is the change that we really want to see in the world? And how does our team really speak into that and wrap around it? And we told the story of our values, and we told why we believed in them. And we talked about how they were going to create this space of belonging and how they could be an amplifier of not just saying this one time, because we're going to syndicate what we're going to say, because not everybody shows up in the same place at the same time in the same medium. And so how do you get your messages out in places without, to your earlier point, taxing yourself of doing all the things on all the platforms and having all of the to-do list? And it's like, I just think we have a really simple formula we call it the impact arc. And the first thing is that you start with warming. Like, and this is this concept of starting at step 0 rather than step 1, which means you're not, if you're launching something, if you're doing something, it's not about the day you launch. It's about what are you doing leading up to that launch. I can tell you, for 2 months before we launched We Are for Good, I mentioned we were working at night. Every night I would send out 10 emails that I was working, or messages, or Facebook DMs, or whatever it was, to my Spanish teacher in high school, to my friend who was in college with me, who I knew had a passion for this, and for this person who was in my Sunday school class, or whatever. And I said, I'm about to launch this thing. And it's not just a podcast, it's this idea. And you love me, and you have supported me my entire life. And if you believe in me, here's 3 ways you can help me when this
Mm,
launches. You can subscribe, you can share, you can, list all the things. So that when we launched on launch day, it wasn't just Becky, John, and Julie launching. We launched with a massive community behind us of people who saw it
mm.
and said, oh, yeah, that's the thing. And so it went, those are our believers. So that's like step 1. And we just think that something as simple as doing that is going to change the way that you look at things. So very, very quickly, that's step one. And the second one is we got to storytell. You know, we have got to be able to tell the story of what's happening now. And we've got to say it honestly. And we've got to put a lot of voices in there. Cognitive diversity is an amazing tool that we need to flex because we don't all have the same lived experiences. We don't all have the same upbringing. We haven't all had life handed to us in a way, from our health to the economy and all of these things. And so we're going to need like a choir of other voices and experiences. Storytell that well, and don't just storytell from yourself. Allow other people to come in. The third one is syndicate. Whatever you're doing, quit making so much content and taxing yourself out. Make one really good piece of content. When I say syndicate, I mean break it apart. Break it apart. If you have an impact report, guess what? You could probably make 90 days of content out of an impact report. You could pull out a quote as one post. You could grab your board list as something and do a board profile every single day. There are ways to create content that are creating stories, and we want you to work smarter, not harder. And the last thing is people have got to stoke. And by the way, these are all S's, like, so you can remember it because alliteration is easy, but stoking, you can't just put something out there and just think that it's going to go and go and go. You have to tag people. You have to respond. When people leave a comment, that's their way of saying, I want to be seen. I want to be a part of this belonging. I have something to say. We need to see them. And so tag people in, like share, get in people's DMs, see them. And I just think that fostering of belonging is going to go so far, and slowly movements begin to build on that. And we have so much content and examples of people who are doing this well. And it's like, we just want to get them in the hands of everybody so everybody can start to scale. We want more good to go out into the world and take over what is so much hate and division, because we believe that's the great catalyst of change is kindness, creativity, innovation, rest, belonging. This is what we need to chase.
It's so good. If none of you wrote notes, I need you to rewind
Grab the
and write that.
transcript.
Yes, grab
Yes.
the transcript. I want to go back to what you said of to be in the business of building community, because that alone will, I mean, that's such a mindset shift versus
Yeah,
like, oh man, I'm just like, because I feel like sometimes when I think of, I can even think of moments in my journey where I just felt like quitting, of course, tons of different burnout
samesies.
stages and just
Yes.
grudging. Like
Yeah,
it just felt like I was just constantly climbing uphill with the wind at my face. And it wasn't in a perspective of like, I'm building a business. It almost felt like yeah, just taxing. Like why
so
do I have
taxing.
to yeah, do that? But when you change that, just even that perspective, that changes a complete mindset of how you are approaching it. So I really like that.
Yeah, I would even say old mindset way is thinking that we're viewing donor value based on what they can give us on their finances. And the new
Mhm.
way is viewing believers' value based on what they bring to the table, and understanding that they're going to bring so much more to the table than just the financial piece is a way to just think about how do we loosen our grip a little bit? How do we give up control, which is really hard for all of us, me included, because when you can kind of shift that focus to community as business, you create this authentic, safe place of belonging. And then you're evolving in step with your believers. And then if you can just give those believers the gift of activation at the end of that,
Mhm.
empower them, mobilize those rabid fans, then that's when the ripple takes off. And
Mhm.
that's a beautiful, beautiful thing to behold. And it is truly there for the taking, I believe.
Mhm.
And we've seen a ton of
Yeah.
missions that are doing it. Go check out Michael J. Fox Foundation is doing this beautifully through annual giving through Facebook. The Elevate Prize Foundation is doing this beautifully with media to make good famous. So many examples, so many examples of people who are doing this beautifully. And I just think, like, I'll give you a quote that Darren Isom, who was on our podcast, it's episode 438, he was coming in and talking about how do we re-envision this world of work. And he says, you know, for people who ultimately have a sense of belonging in a space, they're going to cross town. They're going to pay whatever the costs may be. And they're going to go
Mhm.
see things that are not very interesting just because they want to be there. And they feel like they
Mhm.
should be there and they want to be a part of that movement. So that is what I think is there for the taking for the sector.
Yeah. And I love that because I think that's a misstep of understanding the believer side in the sense that it's almost like resources right in front of us that are being underutilized that actually want
Totally.
to be a part of our story. I was just having a conversation with our director of partnerships that we're building out an advocacy campaign just for our monthly donors, like because I was
Mm-hmm.
like, they want to advocate. They just need the tool to do it and they believe in us. And if we give it, they don't need incentives to do it. They just want to share, but they don't know how to. So let's put together a toolkit. Let's give them the things they need because they already want it. They're already talking about it. They just don't know how to ask more people to be a part of it. And so I think that's so good because I think you have all this content in front of you. You've created it, syndicate. That's such a good advice for you guys as we're going into the end of the year. It's not too late to take things, to syndicate it, to get
Mm-hmm.
your current people who you're believers, to have them advocate for you. You still have a good part of the year. So if you're feeling discouraged in that, like, start now. And then as you go into 2025, consistently build your community and show up for them. Because I think we are also really good. I like that you mentioned retention in the beginning of this podcast. We were really good at not retaining because we only hit it hard maybe at the end of the year. And then
Right.
it's like quarter one, quarter four, the beginning of the year, it's like we forget to
Because
say
we
hi
start
or
all
to step in.
over. Yes. And it's demoralizing, or we got a new goal. But we forget about who
Yeah.
brought us here and that, oh my gosh, they could absolutely lift us to grow
Yeah.
this into bigger. Like grab a friend, bring along and activate in their belief. It's amazing to watch how our sector is shifting right now. It's
It's
really an
so good.
honor. I'm just so
Yeah.
honored to be in this seat, watch it unfold.
Well, I love that you and John and Julie, love Julie. And you guys just
It's the
like
best.
bring these conversations together and you have been doing it for so many years. And I'm excited to see, how that continues to happen. As we wrap up today, I would love for you to share. I always end the Moxie podcast with one last thing to live by. So before we get there, because I didn't warn you on that,
Hey, it's like
I
our
would
one
love
good
for
thing at the end
you
of the podcast. I know it.
exactly. And I've
It's
always like
great.
I always freak out at
Terrified by
rapid
it.
fire. I know. I'm like, I should
Yes.
always have something, but I never do.
Um,
But that's what's great. You speak from the heart. Okay, but tell people how they can get involved. Do you have a membership?
yeah,
Do you guys know the date for the next Impact Uprising? Like,
we
where
do.
can people find you?
Yes.
Obviously we are for good, like LinkedIn, podcast, Instagram. We'll make sure all that's linked. But what's happening now
Yes.
that just started last
Please
month?
come join our movement. Like our movement is unleashed. It is the Impact Uprising. It is the world's global social change makers for good who are rising up and connecting to each other and with the greatest ideas. We're doing it with healing and with purpose and with innovation. So go check out impactuprising.com. Please join. It's just $30 a month. It's actually cheaper if you pay for a full year. And if you can't afford it, let us know because we're going to go find somebody who can pick it up for you because we don't want um, the lack of resources in this sector to keep people from connecting and growing. So go check that out. Yes, the next Impact Up is October 10th. You can find out more about that at impactuprising.com as well. And I told you that we only focus on one topic. We did power in July, and this is actually going to be hosted on World Mental Health Day. And so our topic is healing. And we feel the
So
burnout
good.
and the exhaustion. And we are bringing people in to not only just heal, but learn how to take care of ourselves, learn how to work through some trauma responses that we have in this work. And I really hope it's going to be, I want to see the ripple of that healing go out. So, as someone who had a nervous breakdown at the hands of nonprofit work, I want more people to talk about it. I want more people to heal from it. So, I hope I see you all there.
Okay, October 10th, impactuprising.com.
Totally
We'll put
free.
that in the show
Yep.
notes. Totally free.
Yeah.
Um, I love that. Love free. I couldn't join you guys in July, which I need to, I don't know if you have the recording. I think
We
I signed up for the
do.
membership. Guys, I
Yeah, yeah.
did.
If you're
I
members,
should
free
represent.
recordings, go check it out and heck, get into the AI tool and say what are the biggest takeaways from it, which we have built into it. So get the cliff notes.
That's
But
awesome.
I love
Yeah.
you, love your community. I just think what you're doing, these conversations, just monumentally important. Thank you.
Thanks, Becky. I'm so glad that we were able to make this happen and yeah, just be together. It's been a bit. So be together today. And as we end, if you would love to share something of inspiration and motivation to our community and share one last thing to live by.
I'm a big Ted Lasso fan. I don't know if anybody else is out there, but there's so many wisdom nuggets that I get from that show. And I heard one the other day, and I was like, in a time such as this, where we have so much going on in the world and there is so much division and angst, I just want to encourage people to don't fight back, fight forward, and take what you're learning, share it, be good to yourself, and understand that the fight isn't just about, who has power and who has the biggest microphone, that you have power. Your story is important, your health is important, your influence is important, and it is absolutely your superpower in this work. So take care of yourself, fight it forward, be brave. I'm rooting for you.
Thank you, Becky.
You're welcome. I
Love
love you.
it.
Yes.
I
Love being
love
with
it
good
too.
humor.
Yes. And for all of our Moxie community, guys, there's one more week in this month. This has probably been one of my favorite months this year. As you guys know, we've had a theme each month of this year. We're in behind the scenes changing a few things up for next year. So stay tuned. But show up next week. We have one more amazing week speaking directly to you guys in the nonprofit sector. And my hope is that this month has been encouraging, inspiring, and gives you a little bit more kind of oomph and momentum to move throughout the end of the year. So we'll see everybody at Impact Uprising. And for everyone a part of our community, as always, Moxie on.